My name is Claire. I'm 36 years old, and I work as an accountant at an organic food company tucked somewhere in the quiet expanse of Minnesota. I live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment, a space just large enough for me and the thoughts I've kept carefully hidden from the world. Thoughts I've never dared to voice, not even to myself, not until now. I started planning for Christmas back in October, almost obsessively. So it wasn't about the trinkets or the festivity. It wasn't about the scented candles or the cheesy holiday playlists. No, it was about perfecting it, everything. For my mom, for Eric, my younger brother, for his wife, Danielle, for the twins, Ava and Mason. I even picked out a little gift for their dog. A red sweater that read Santa's favorite, because why not? If you're going to give, you give everything. I'd never once forgotten a present in the last 10 years. I remembered that day in June when Ava had casually mentioned a science book Mason had longed for after spotting it at the bookstore. It wasn't just a fleeting comment. It stayed with me etched into my phone notes, along with every single detail. Every gift, every name, every moment was planned and scheduled with precision. I had it all locked in place by the first week of December. Wrapping the gifts was an art form: snowman print paper for the kids, golden ribbons for Ava, and blue for Mason. Each box, each ribbon was chosen with meticulous care. I even tucked in extra items just in case someone unexpected showed up: handmade cookies, a bottle of lavender perfume, a few untagged toys, all to ensure no one felt left out. I poured all my hopes into this Christmas. It felt like my final chance to believe, to feel like I belonged somewhere, that my presence meant something. I envisioned it all: the twinkling lights on the tree, Ava and Mason tearing through their gifts, my mom wiping a tear as she opened the silk scarf I'd picked out just for her. I imagined Eric, maybe just a nod of acknowledgement, just one simple gesture that said, "I get it. You're not invisible, Claire. You're a part of this family." But that was before I got the text. It came at 7:18 a.m. on December 23rd, a message from my mom: "Claire, this year, Eric's family wants to celebrate privately. Please don't come. Sorry for the late notice." The words blurred in front of my eyes. Late notice. Private? I thought it was a joke. I laughed at first, an uncomfortable, hollow laugh that echoed in the quiet of my apartment. Mom must be tired, I told myself. Maybe she was upset about something, anything, but then I called 3 times. No answer. Eric texted next. Cold, unyielding. You don't need to come. There's no place here for someone who doesn't know their role. My role. I stood frozen, staring at the neatly arranged pile of gifts beneath my Christmas tree. They looked like cruel evidence now. My carefully crafted presents, ribbons and cards, had suddenly turned into a painful reminder. I had poured my heart into something that didn't matter, something that would never find room to be accepted. The gifts are still in my trunk. I don't know if I should return them or donate them. I can't bring myself to decide. What's clear to me now, however, is that this Christmas isn't about family. It's about the realization that I've been clinging to a circle that quietly closed around me without so much as a whisper. For an hour, I debated whether to drive to my parents' house in Bloomington. I should have listened. My mom's text was clear, but a part of me needed to believe. Maybe it was all just a misunderstanding. Maybe once they saw me, saw the gifts, saw the smile I'd held on to for so long, maybe things would change. Maybe they'd realize I wasn't the invisible one after all. I turned on the radio, the music too loud, too jarring. I tried to drown out the storm in my head, but nothing could silence it. Outside, the snow began to fall, soft, steady flakes gathering on the windshield. A gentle reminder that winter had arrived. Not with the warmth I'd hoped for, but with the coldness of truth. When I pulled up to my parents' house, everything looked like it always did. Christmas lights outlined the roof, a grand tree glowing in the window. But something felt wrong. Something was missing. No laughter. No sounds of Ava and Mason running out to greet me. I took a breath, my hands trembling, whether from the cold or something deeper. I couldn't tell. I opened the trunk, grabbed the gift bags, and approached the door. I rang the doorbell once. Twice. My mom appeared standing in a deep red sweater. She looked different, her face expressionless. "Claire?" she said, voice soft, tired. "I told you not to come this year." I froze the words, feeling like a slap to the face. I glanced past her, searching for some sign of warmth of the family I thought I was a part of. Then I heard Eric's voice, sharp and dismissive, cutting through the silence. "Just say it, Mom. She's not welcome. We don't need failures here." His words hit me like a physical blow. His eyes, once full of need, full of desperation, when he'd begged me to help pay his tuition, were now cold, dismissive. I forced a smile, though every muscle in my face ached. Failure, that's what I was now. Just because I hadn't sent money in the past 3 months? Just because I hadn't been able to fix everything? Eric crossed his arms, standing behind my mom. 3 months. Claire, you haven't helped us at all this year. The kids didn't even get new clothes for school, and you... He paused, his voice dripping with disdain. You bought a new car? Went on trips, living like a queen. I felt the sting of his words, like ice running through my veins. I couldn't speak. There was nothing left to say. What was left, after all, when the people you loved and thought loved you cast you aside without so much as a second glance? I barely let the words escape my lips. "It's on a payment plan," I muttered, the edge of my voice sharp, despite myself. I traveled with my savings. My throat tightened with every syllable, as if the air itself was turning thick, suffocating me with its weight. As for the kids, they're your kids. Eric, not mine. I hoped my words might find a flicker of understanding in the space between us, some sign of compassion, some trace of the bond I had thought we shared. But my mother's gaze stayed fixed on the doorstep, her eyes downward, avoiding mine, as if she couldn't face me, as if she couldn't see the years I had carried them. One small gesture of help at a time. I came here with gifts for everyone. I tried again, my voice faltering. All I wanted was a warm evening, like every year. The plea barely made it past my lips before Eric scoffed his laugh full of disdain. "You want to know what you did wrong?" He spat a sneer curling on his face. "You're the only one in this family with stable income, acting like nobody else matters. Stop pretending. You just like being the selfless one." "Well, not this year," he added, his voice biting. "We're done." I could feel my fingers growing numb, gripping the gift bag so tightly the handles seemed to cut into my palms. It hurt deeply, like the sudden coldness of betrayal sinking into my bones. I stood there, trembling, on the edge of something final, something irrevocable. "Fine," I whispered, barely audible, my throat constricting around the words. "If that's what you think, I won't bother you again." I turned away, but as my foot landed on the first step down from the porch, Eric's voice sliced through the frozen silence, dripping with sarcasm. "Merry Christmas, Claire. Don't forget your gifts. No one wants them." I didn't look back. I wouldn't let them see the tears threatening to break free, the tremor in my hands, the crack in my heart. My eyes burned, but I held it all inside as I walked quickly back to my car, hands shaking as I set the bags on the passenger seat. The engine never roared to life. The coldness of the yard light stretching across the snow felt somehow heavier than the weight of my heart. All I could hear now was the rapid beat of my pulse, the rush of wind whistling through the cracks of the car window. And still, I didn't cry. I couldn't. I had no tears left to waste on rejection. Not this time, not anymore. So this is how my Christmas begins. I whispered it to myself as I stared at the house I once thought of as home. The house that had closed its door on me, leaving me with nothing but the distant glow of a family that no longer knew me. I used to believe that helping family was a given, especially for Eric, my younger brother, the one I'd once cradled in my arms after school when the bullies left him in tears, the one I always promised I'd take care of, the one I loved without question. But sitting there in my car, headlights dimming on the house, I suddenly understood. Maybe I wasn't helping. Maybe I was being used. And worse, I was the one who let it go on for far too long. The memories hit me hard. The late-night calls, Eric's voice trembling, desperate after losing his job. "Can you send me some money?" he had begged. And I had, without hesitation, without question. Every time I transferred $200 the first time, then more. After that, tuition, medical bills, car repairs. I thought it was out of love, but now in the stillness of the car, the truth was clearer than ever. I wasn't just a sister. I wasn't just a family member. I was a walking wallet. Failure. That's what Eric had called me. That's what I was in their eyes, just a source of funds. No love, no gratitude, just what they could take. I remembered paying over $3,000 for Ava's tuition in her first 2 years. I covered their utilities when they fell behind on rent. And last year, I borrowed from my retirement savings to cover their mortgage payment before the bank foreclosed. I'd kept that quiet, too. No thank you, no acknowledgement, nothing. And yet, despite all of this, I still believed that giving was enough, that love would find its way back to me. But the more I gave, the more it seemed like an obligation to them. I wasn't helping. I was enabling their expectations. And the more I gave, the more I felt like I was losing myself in the process. A chime from my phone startled me from my thoughts. It was a message from Danielle, Eric's wife, Claire. "I'm sorry. I don't agree with how Eric treated you. I just didn't have the courage to speak up today." I stared at the screen, my eyes stinging. Danielle had never been particularly close to me, but she had always been kind, gentle. When I first met her, I'd given her a leather journal with her name engraved on it, knowing she loved writing. And now, of all people, she was the only one apologizing. Even though she wasn't the one who caused this, I didn't reply right away. Instead, I set the phone down on the passenger seat and drove. I drove through the night, the silence filling the car like a thick fog. I needed to think. My mind drifted back to every year, every instance where I quietly carried the weight for Eric. One small expense at a time, then larger ones, until I had given more than I had to give. I thought of the $200, the late-night calls, the unspoken expectations that had crept into my life like an unwelcome shadow. When I got back to my apartment around 10:30 p.m., the quiet felt like a distant memory. The chaos of earlier seemed so far removed from this stillness. I set the gift bags on the dining table and sank into the chair like a soldier returning from a battle unseen, unthanked. I turned on my laptop, pulled up my personal finance tracker, a habit I'd never broken. I'd logged every expense, every dollar. Even the smallest toy had its place. I scrolled down through the notes, helped Eric with Ava's tuition, helped with car payments, car repairs, medical bills, total over $32,000 in the last 5 years. The sum of my love, the sum of my sacrifice. And still, no one had ever said thank you. I sat there, the weight of silence pressing down on me like an unbearable burden. I had never asked for anything in return. Not once. Never calculated the cost of my kindness or the hours spent making sure everyone had what they needed. I thought it was what an older sister should do. But now, after being met with nothing but disregard and coldness, I understood the truth too late. Family love can't be one-sided. They had gotten so used to me carrying the load that they had stopped asking if I could bear it. They assumed I always would, and when I stopped being the constant giver, the ever-present support, I became the failure. The words cut through me like a blade sliding too easily into the softest part of my heart. I shut the laptop, closing out the numbers, the calculations, the debts of time and emotion that had been laid out on that screen for me to see. Danielle's message was still there, staring back at me. I typed a quick reply. "Thanks for reaching out. I'm not mad. From now on, everything will be different." I didn't know what lay ahead, what the future would hold now that the bridge between me and my family had been torn down. But one thing was clear. I wouldn't let anyone ever again treat my kindness like a duty, like an obligation. I spent Christmas Eve in a kind of numb silence. No children laughing, no mugs of hot cocoa, no scarf knitted by my mom's hands, like she had done every year without fail. Instead, it was just me, the little tree I had decorated by myself in the corner of the room, and the gift bag still sitting untouched on the table. Unopened. I didn't cry. I think my last tear fell in the car, the moment Eric's words pierced through my chest. The moment he looked at me with such contempt, called me a fulfiller, and I realized in that instant that I had been living in a dream I couldn't afford to keep anymore. 3 days passed. My phone stayed silent. No message from my mom. No check-in from Dad. No explanation from Eric. Even Danielle, who had once apologized, disappeared after that single message. One brief apology, as if the moment I stopped being their rescuer, I had simply been erased from their lives. I didn't call. I didn't try to make peace. I didn't send another dollar to Eric's account like I had so many times before. For the first time in years, I chose to walk away completely. Someone once told me that family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about the people who don't make you beg to be seen. I had brushed off that statement back then, thinking it was just another cliché. But now, as I sat there alone, it felt like those words were carved into every breath I took. They echoed in my mind, a constant reminder that the love I had given had never been received in the way I had hoped. I spent the rest of the holiday doing small things I had never allowed myself to do before. I cleaned my bookshelf. I cooked meals for myself instead of eating canned food because I had been too busy caring for others. I even picked up my old journal, a habit I had abandoned for years, and wrote down the messy thoughts that had tangled themselves inside me. In the scribbles, I finally admitted something to myself. I was tired of always being strong, tired of always sending money on time, always suppressing my emotions to make everyone else comfortable, tired of carrying responsibilities that no one had asked me to carry, only to be dismissed as useless the moment I stopped. I didn't expect them to understand. I didn't need them to come back and apologize. I just wanted this silence to last. At first it stung, the absence of their voices, the void they left behind. But now, as I settled into it, the silence felt like a thin layer of frost over every wound, cold but freeing. On New Year's Eve, when the clock struck midnight, I turned on my phone one last time. Still no message. I set it aside, poured myself a glass of white wine, and raised it in a silent toast to myself. Happy New Year, Claire. You made it. The next day, New Year's Day, I started packing away the Christmas decorations. As I moved the tree out of the living room corner, I noticed the smallest gift box I had prepared, the one for Eric. A genuine leather wallet engraved with his name. To Eric, always by your side. I let out a soft laugh, the kind that was equal parts sad and freeing. I picked up the wallet, looked at it one last time, then gently placed it in the donation bin alongside the other gifts. If it couldn't be a symbol of family love, then maybe it could serve as a reminder of care for someone who needed it more than he did. 3 weeks passed after the holidays ended, and I returned to work. I still hadn't received a single message, but it didn't hurt the way it used to. The weight of their absence wasn't a sharp pain anymore. It was just a hollow space, a place I no longer felt obligated to fill. I started spending more time on myself. I signed up for a morning yoga class. I bought a ukulele, though I'd never played an instrument before. I even called my old college roommate, the one I'd kept telling myself I needed to catch up with soon. For nearly 4 years, I'd put off reaching out, but now, each small step felt like a piece of myself I was rediscovering. Pieces I had forgotten, mattered, pieces I had neglected for too long. I wasn't invisible anymore, not to myself, and that for the first time in a long time felt like enough. It was strange. Only when I stopped being the giver, the sacrificer, did I start learning how to truly be me. But the unraveling of that old identity didn't end there. One evening, in early February, while I was going through my beginning of year financial summaries, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the screen. It was tempting to let it go to voicemail to keep the silence, but some small voice inside told me to pick it up. A man's voice came through the line, calm and measured, but carrying a weight of unfamiliarity. Hello. I'm Thomas Reed, an attorney. I represent a client involved in financial matters concerning you and your family. I sat up straight, my heart skipping a beat. An attorney, financial matters? My mind raced. What did you just say? I can't share much over the phone, he continued. But Miss Claire, I think you should know something serious is happening. And in that moment, I knew this silence wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something I hadn't even begun to prepare for. I had never met an attorney before. Yet there I was sitting in a small waiting room outside the office of Thomas Reed Palms, damp with sweat. The afternoon light filtered through the blinds, casting shadows across the room that seemed to mirror the heavy weight in my chest. When the door opened, I was greeted by a man in his mid-40s, sharply dressed, exuding a calm confidence that made my insides tighten. He extended his hand, the kind of handshake that felt too firm for comfort, the kind that spoke of uncomfortable truths already known. Thank you for coming. Claire, I know this came out of nowhere. I nodded, trying to steady myself to keep my voice steady. You said this has to do with financial matters between me and my family. What exactly? He opened a manila folder, sliding it gently toward me. The contents inside felt like they were meant to be whispered, not revealed, in the sterile air of an attorney's office. A relative of yours asked me to review the financial assistance you've provided to your younger brother. Eric. Thomas, said his voice, betraying no hint of the storm that was about to unfold. I frowned, my mind trying to process the sudden shift. You mean Danielle? He nodded, the smallest flicker of acknowledgement in his eyes. Yes. She uncovered some information that raised concern. I opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside were bank statements, screenshots of messages, and a detailed summary of the money I'd sent Eric over the past 5 years. Some of it was familiar. Summer camp fees, mortgage help, allergy, medication for Ava. But then I saw entries that I didn't recognize. One in particular stopped me cold. Transfer from Claire, $500, followed by a transaction to a website for sports betting. My breath caught in my throat. I looked up. Heart pounding. You're telling me Eric used the money I gave him to gamble? Thomas didn't hesitate. Not just once. Danielle discovered a hidden account Eric set up without telling her. She's been monitoring it quietly, and now she believes he's used a significant portion of the support money, including yours, for personal untraceable spending. I couldn't find words. The weight of the revelation crushed me, each piece of information like a sharp stone lodged deep in my chest. She's not looking to take legal action. Thomas continued, his voice steady, unaffected. At least not yet, but she felt you deserved to know, so you wouldn't be blindsided by future demands. If Eric continues down this path, she may use this evidence to protect herself and the children. The folder closed with a soft snap. I couldn't look at it anymore. My chest felt hollow, but also strangely on fire. The words Eric had spat at me echoed in my mind, still fresh, still raw. You haven't helped us at all this year. Meanwhile, he'd been gambling away the money. I had sent money I had thought was going toward the family. When I left the law office, the sun had dipped low in the sky. The melting snow on the sidewalk formed small, frozen puddles, and the air carried the biting cold of reality. I pulled my phone from my pocket, half distracted, thinking to call Danielle. But then I saw it, an unread message from her sent the night before. Claire, I know you said you wouldn't come back, but I need to say this. I'm sorry. I stayed silent for so long. What Eric did was wrong, and I see that now. If you need anything, I'm here. I stood still, feeling the weight of the words as they sank into me. The apology was brief, but it wasn't meaningless. Danielle, who had once avoided making eye contact with me at every holiday gathering, was now the only one acknowledging the truth. I stood there for a long moment, throat tight, unsure of what to say. I typed a few words, deleted them, and then typed again. Finally, I sent just one line. Thank you for being brave. But this time, I won't forget. It wasn't a reproach. It was simply the truth. When someone stays silent while you're being pushed into a hole, even if they reach out later, you can't climb out like you never fell. I couldn't sleep that night. The numbers in the folder replayed in my mind like an unshakable echo. Every transaction, every receipt felt like a personal betrayal. I thought of all the gifts I had carefully chosen for Eric, the birthday notes I had written by hand, the countless times I pushed aside my own needs to help him stay afloat. And now, I was the one labeled selfish. The weight of all the years I had spent propping up the illusion of family came crashing down around me. But this time, there was no turning back. I had crossed a line, and there was no going back to the role they had cast me in. Not anymore. But this time, I wasn't going back. Not anymore. I knew Eric wouldn't stop here. If he realized I was no longer under his control, he'd try to take it back, no matter the cost. And I was right, because 2 days later, the phone rang again. An unfamiliar number. This time, it wasn't a lawyer. It was Eric. His voice was no longer full of contempt. It was full of panic. I was in the middle of making dinner, my usual Saturday night treat, creamy mushroom pasta, when a loud knock shook my door. Not the polite kind from a neighbor, not the gentle thud of a delivery. This was urgent, sharp, demanding. I hesitated, then walked to the door and opened it. Just as I expected, Eric stood there. His eyes were bloodshot, his thick winter coat slipping off one shoulder, the scent of cigarette smoke and cold snow clinging to him like an unwanted second skin. Claire, we need to talk. I folded my arms, standing in the doorway. You're showing up now. I raised an eyebrow. You weren't answering your phone. I had to come. I blocked the entrance with my body. If you're here to blame me, start a scene or ask for more money. Don't bother. I don't have anything left for you. He froze for a second, and then his eyes turned cold. You're really cutting me off after everything I've done for you. I let out a dry laugh. After everything you did for me? I shook my head. Yes, and I should have done it a long time ago. He stepped forward, desperation in his eyes. Claire, you don't get it. We're in trouble. Danielle wants to separate. The kids need new clothes. School fees are due. Everything's falling apart. I need you. I met his gaze, unwavering. No, you don't need me. You need my wallet, and I'm done playing that game. You can't do this. You're the most responsible one in the family. I raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. Responsible? You think I exist to clean up your messes? I didn't come into this world to fix your life. I've worked too hard for a little piece of peace, and I'm not giving it up again, he sneered. What about Mom and Dad? You gonna leave them too? A surge of anger flared in my chest. They chose you. They stood by while you humiliated me. They turned their backs when I stood on their doorstep with gifts. If they needed me, they would have called. But they didn't. Not once. Eric stayed silent. I could see it now. The guilt wasn't there. It was calculation. He was still trying to manipulate the situation to keep me in his debt. You know, he said, his voice dropping. Danielle's digging through everything. She's bringing in a lawyer to uncover every account, and you... Stop! I snapped, my voice sharp as ice. If you're suggesting I'd be dragged into this for helping you over the years, let me be clear. I transferred money, believing it was for your family. I didn't know you were gambling with it or stashing it in secret accounts. His face shifted. For the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. Maybe he finally realized that I wasn't the gullible sister anymore, the one who'd pull out her wallet with every apology. I stepped back, still holding the door. I won't be pulled into the mess you created. You have a lawyer. Good, so can I. And if this ends in court, I'll tell the whole truth. He clenched his jaw, fury bubbling beneath the surface. You really want to take it that far? I nodded. If that's what it takes to end this. Yes, it's time you learned to stand on your own, instead of living off other people's kindness. He stood there for another second, eyes filled with disbelief, before he turned and walked away without a word. The moment the door clicked shut behind him, I leaned against it, my heart still racing. My hands were trembling, but not from fear, from release. It was the first time I had said exactly what I truly thought. No sugarcoating, no self-blame, no soft landings. I had finally cut the ties that had bound me to the role I was never meant to play. I walked back to the kitchen, my body still vibrating from the weight of it all. The mushroom cream sauce was still simmering. I turned down the heat, plated my dinner, and sprinkled a little shredded cheese on top. Then I sat at the table. I took a deep breath, looking around my apartment, my small sanctuary. No one could take this from me. Not anymore. I dug in, savoring the flavors that tasted just a little sweeter now. Finally, for the first time in a long time, it felt like I was living for me. A simple meal in a small kitchen, but the beginning of a life no longer bound by fake family debt. 2 days after the confrontation with Eric, I thought things had finally quieted down. No more pounding on my door. No threatening calls. No guilt-ridden texts. The whole town seemed wrapped in February's bitter hush as snow thickened on the rooftops and an icy wind howled through the windows. I had just finished a Zoom meeting when my phone rang, another unknown number, an area code I didn't recognize. Normally, I would have let it go to voicemail, but something inside told me to pick it up. Hello, this is Claire. A low professional male voice answered. Hi, Claire. This is Mark Dawson. I'm an attorney representing a client with connections to your family. Do you have a moment to talk? I straightened up. An attorney. What's going on? I'm sorry to catch you off guard, he said, steady and calm. I can't discuss much over the phone, but I've been asked to review financial transactions between you and a relative. Specifically, your brother, Eric Spencer. If you're willing, I'd like to meet in person to explain further. A flood of possibilities rushed through my mind. Like a fast-forward reel, was Eric suing me? Was the family trying to reclaim money, or worse, were they trying to frame me for some kind of legal mess? I agreed to the meeting, though. Suspicion weighed heavily on me. We scheduled it for the next morning at a small law office about a 30-minute drive from where I lived. Mark Dawson's office was inside a quaint red brick building, its quiet halls almost echoing the solitude of winter outside. I walked down the hallway, the click of my heels the only sound, and there he was standing to greet me. Tall, polite, the kind of man who likely spent most of his day reviewing case files. After a few pleasantries, he opened a thick folder and slid it toward me. I've been authorized by Eric's wife, Danielle Spencer, he said. She uncovered some questionable financial activity and believes you deserve to know the truth. I couldn't hide my shock. Danielle. Mark nodded. She doesn't want to escalate things, at least not yet. But given the amount of money involved on your end, she thought it was best to be upfront with you. I flipped open the folder, the contents inside feeling like the unraveling of a carefully crafted lie. Inside were copies of bank transactions, transfers from my account to Eric's, followed by withdrawals into another account labeled ES Investments. It wasn't a family account. It had nothing to do with the kids, as I had always assumed. Danielle had discovered this secondary account a few weeks ago. Mark explained, and had grown suspicious. She started tracking it. She found Eric had been investing the money in online betting platforms, spending it at upscale restaurants, even booking hotel rooms while telling his wife he was out meeting clients. I sat frozen, a chill running down my spine, despite the warmth of the room. I didn't know any of this, I whispered. Danielle doesn't think you did? Mark said, softening his tone. She said, if you had known, you never would have kept helping. I skimmed through the statements, my stomach churning, as the dates lined up each one with a moment I remembered all too clearly. Eric had called me, trembling, telling me that Mason needed school fees, that the car had broken down, that Danielle's hours had been cut. I had believed every word, only to realize he had lied through every single one. Danielle is considering a separation, Mark said. She wants to ensure the money you sent doesn't put her and the kids at a disadvantage during any asset division, if divorce becomes inevitable. I nodded slowly. Does she want me to do anything? Not at the moment, Mark replied. She just wants you to be aware. And if Eric tries to pressure you again, you have the right to protect yourself legally. All the evidence here is legitimate and can be used if things get worse. I didn't know how long I sat there, but as I stood up, shook Mark's hand and thanked him. One thing was painfully clear. The thing I'd been calling family had rotted long ago. I'd just been too busy pouring in money and trust to notice. I walked out of the office into the winter sunlight, casting long streaks across the icy sidewalk. My hand clenched around the folder that should never have needed to exist. I brought it home and set it on the dining table like a bomb that hadn't gone off for years. I had held birthday cards, medical bills, even crayon drawings from Ava and Mason, each one with a message of love. But nothing had ever made me feel this angry and hollow like these papers did. I sat down flipping through each page like peeling back a truth my heart wasn't ready for, but my mind demanded I face. The bank statements clearly showed transfers from my account, $600, $125, even $50 at times. All matching moments when Eric had called with a trembling voice saying the world was falling apart. And days later, In the same statements were large cash withdrawals transferred into a secondary account called Spencer E. Holdings, a name I had never heard before. I kept flipping each page, more damning than the last. A receipt from a luxury resort in Denver caught my eye, dated during the exact time Eric claimed Danielle and the kids were sick. I sat there staring at the documents in disbelief. The person I had once called family had lied to me. I had been played. All the money, all the help I had given, had been nothing but fuel for his deception. As I sat there, feeling both hollow and furious, I realized that the life I had been living, the one where I gave and gave without question, was no longer mine. It was a life that belonged to someone else, someone who was still taking, still demanding. But I wasn't that person anymore. "Can you help with some medicine?" The question was buried within a long list of transactions, simple requests for money that had somehow turned into a weapon of control. But there at the bottom of the folder was something that made my heart sink further than I thought possible. A charge for a Rolex watch paid for, with a card linked to that secondary account. By then, I wasn't shocked anymore. I was numb. The pages, once just pieces of paper, now felt like my life being laid bare, stripped, dissected, and twisted into something unrecognizable. At the very back of the folder were screenshots of messages between Eric and someone labeled only as G. The recipient's name was not revealed, but those words made my stomach drop. "Don't worry, that girl's easy to fool. Just mention the kids and she'll pull out her wallet. She thinks she's some noble big sister. She's just a credit card with feelings." I froze. There are no words for the moment when you realize you've become the punchline to someone. Someone you've sacrificed everything for. Eric hadn't just used me, he mocked me for it. I closed the folder, my hands gripping it so tightly that my knuckles turned white. What I felt now wasn't hurt or disappointment. It was a burning, deep anger, a fury that burned through every inch of me. All those times I stayed silent. All the times I said, "It's okay, I can help," never asking for anything in return. Not even the basic respect of being seen as more than just a credit card with feelings. I grabbed my phone and texted Danielle. "Thank you for showing me the truth, but you need to know I won't stay out of this anymore." The message was marked as read. Within a minute, Danielle called. Her voice was strained tight with emotion. "Claire, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize how bad it really was. I suspected, but I didn't know he'd actually say something like that." I gently cut her off. "Danielle, just discovering it was brave. But this isn't just about the two of you anymore. This is about me, about my dignity, and I won't let it be stepped on again." "I understand," she whispered. "I'll do whatever it takes to protect the kids, even if it means leaving him." I looked out the window, the snow still falling, but I no longer felt cold. A steely resolve had taken root inside me, growing and strengthening. With every word I spoke, I wouldn't let Eric trap himself in a web of lies and drag others down with him. I thought of all the people who had stayed silent, who had turned their backs when I needed them most. My parents, the awkward dinners, my mom's forced hugs. When I pulled out my checkbook, everything became clear. They hadn't avoided me because I wasn't good enough. They avoided me because I no longer benefited them. I wouldn't back down. I wouldn't let my kindness become someone's punchline again. And this time, I wouldn't go through it alone. I opened my laptop and started compiling a detailed ledger of every dollar I'd ever sent Eric, dates, reasons, supporting proof. I knew I couldn't get that money back, but I could reclaim my voice, and if needed, I'd bring everything into the light. I looked at the folder on the table. Inside was the truth, painful but necessary. Truth that once exposed couldn't be buried again. I was in the kitchen, washing my hands after prepping a batch of butter cookies. One of the few things that had brought me peace lately when my phone buzzed. Another unknown number, But I already knew who it was. Eric. I almost didn't answer. In fact, I'd ignored dozens of his calls and texts all week. But something inside told me it was time to end this once and for all. I wiped my hands, picked up the phone. "This is Claire." Eric's voice came through dry, impatient. "I know you're behind this." I raised an eyebrow. "Behind what? Don't play dumb." "Danielle froze our accounts. She drained the savings, hired a lawyer, and threatened divorce. All of it started the moment you showed up." I kept my voice even. "Oh, I didn't show up. I was invited by your wife." He exhaled sharply, his tone sharp with anger. "She's the mother of my kids. How could you convince her to walk away from our family?" I let out a cold laugh. "Eric, you convinced her. I was just the last one to stop pretending. Don't confuse consequences with enemies. You lied. You used me for years. You lied to Danielle. You neglected your kids. You funneled money into places you thought no one would notice. And now that it's blowing up, you're blaming me." His voice cracked, like he was struggling to stay composed. "You don't understand. Everyone expects me to be the provider, the perfect dad, the good husband. You've never known that kind of pressure." I leaned back against the counter, my grip on the phone tight, my chest tight, with a mixture of anger and relief. "No, Eric, I don't understand. But I do understand one thing. You've been lying to everyone, including yourself, for so long that you don't even know what the truth looks like anymore. It's not my job to fix your mess anymore, and it's time you figured that out." He was silent on the other end. For the first time, I heard nothing. No excuses, no justifications. And that, more than anything, was my final victory. I cut him off, no longer gentle. Don't confuse responsibility with selfishness. I helped you more than once. I saved you from losing your house, going bankrupt, and letting your kids go without. And what did I get? A message calling me, a talking wallet, an insult at the front door. And now you're mad that I'm not covering for you anymore. Silence. Then his tone shifted. That familiar, smug laugh, the one he used last Christmas when he strolled past me and said, "Failures don't belong here." I could hear it in his voice again. The arrogance, the entitlement. "You really think you're getting away with this?" He sneered. "Mom and Dad are still on my side. You can make things up, but you're not the only one with a voice in this family." I tightened my grip on the phone. But my heart was calm for the first time in years. I was done being manipulated. His words no longer had power over me. Family doesn't mean blindness. And if they're still backing you after all of this, then I'm more certain than ever that walking away was the right choice. "Say whatever you want, Eric, but don't ever call me again." He started to speak, but I cut him off, my voice firm. "It's over, Eric. I'm not your fixer. I'm not your emergency contact when your world crumbles only to be ghosted. Once you're fed again, I'm the person you pushed out with your own hands." He said nothing. "I don't owe you anything," I added slowly. "And if you keep bothering me, you'll be hearing from my attorney." I hung up before he could respond, the finality of it all settling over me. My hand was still slightly shaking, not out of fear, but from the weight of finality. There's no easy victory when you have to break from your own blood, but some ties, the longer you hold on to them, the more you lose yourself. I stood still for a few moments, allowing the silence to fill the space. Then I returned to the kitchen. The batch of cookies I'd been making was still waiting. I adjusted the oven temperature and carefully arranged each cookie on the tray, as if it were a quiet ritual to close a chapter that had dragged on too long. I was organizing financial folders on my computer when my phone buzzed with a message from Danielle. "Do you have a moment to talk?" I called her back immediately. Her voice came through soft, but firmer than I'd ever heard it before. "Claire, I've made my decision." Danielle's voice was steady. "The kids and I are leaving this weekend. Eric's going to a conference in Cleveland for 3 days. I'll have time to pack and move without him interfering." I paused. "Are you sure about this move? It'll change everything." "I know," she exhaled, but silence protects no one. I've been quiet too long. My kids don't deserve to grow up in a home full of tension, lies, and shouting. I nodded, even though she couldn't see it. What do you need me to do? Danielle hesitated. I found a small apartment in Des Moines. The schools there are good and it's peaceful, but the deposit and first month's rent? It's a lot. I hate to ask, but... You don't have to explain anything. I cut her off. Send me the account info. I'll transfer the money today. Claire, I don't even know how to thank you. Don't, I said gently. This time, I'm helping someone who truly deserves it, and I'm not doing it out of duty. I'm doing it because I believe you're doing the right thing. Danielle was quiet for a moment. I could feel her tears through every shaky breath on the line. I've packed everything, clothes, documents, the kids' toys, she whispered. The truck's coming tomorrow night. I haven't told anyone, not even Eric's parents. I don't want anyone trying to stop me. You're not alone, I reassured her. I'm here anytime you need me. The call ended quietly, but I felt something shift inside me. Not sadness, but relief. After so many years weighed down by pretense and exploitation, someone was finally choosing to step out of that cycle with me. The next morning, I woke earlier than usual. The sky was still dark, snow clinging to the window frames, casting a golden glow from the streetlights. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and logged into my bank accounts. With just a few clicks, the money was sent. It wasn't a huge amount compared to what I'd given Eric, but this time, it had real meaning. That afternoon, Danielle sent me a photo. Ava and Mason sitting on a pile of moving boxes, each holding a worn-out toy, grinning ear to ear. Her caption was simple, but full of hope. Goodbye, old house. Hello, new life. I saved the photo into a folder labeled New Beginnings. It was the first time I used those words and didn't feel hollow. This time, I was helping not out of obligation, but out of a desire to see someone else stand strong, to walk away from a life of lies and manipulation, and finally find peace. That evening, while reading my phone, rang again. Eric's number. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail, his voice raw with fury. She's gone. You're behind this, aren't you? Don't think you've won? I'll find a way. You destroyed my family? I deleted the message without listening any further. I had no reason to keep his voice, no obligation to hear another excuse. The next morning, Danielle called. We made it safely. The kids love the new place. I just enrolled them in the local school, and for the first time in forever, I slept through the night. I smiled. Sounds like a fresh start. I couldn't have done this without you, she whispered. No, Danielle, I said. You saved yourself. I just gave a little push. We talked for a few more minutes, ending with a promise. No matter how far apart we lived, we'd stay in touch. Not because of family ties, but because of mutual respect and real trust between two women who had learned to value themselves. I sat quietly in the living room, the winter sunlight pouring through the window, warming the space. I thought of Eric, probably standing alone in that empty house, surrounded only by the lies he'd built, and I thought maybe, just maybe, Danielle's quiet departure was the loudest wake-up call Eric would ever get. Time passed faster than I expected. Just a few months after Danielle moved away, I began receiving regular messages from her. No more silent apologies or anxious updates. Now it was pictures Ava in her new school uniform, Mason holding up his math award with pride, Danielle in a tiny kitchen wearing an apron and smiling a smile I had never seen before. When she lived with Eric, she had found a job at a local organic grocery store, fixed hours a kind, boss. Nothing glamorous, but stable. She told me every paycheck, no matter how small, felt like reclaiming a piece of herself she'd lost during the marriage. Back then, Danielle once texted, I just lived day to day, hoping Eric wouldn't explode. Now I wake up every morning knowing what I need to do, and it's mine. I read her words and my heart settled. Not because I needed her gratitude, but because I knew someone had found herself again, after nearly losing everything. As for Eric, he was still Eric. I didn't seek out news, but rumors trickled in. He returned to the old house and told neighbors that Danielle had been manipulated. He claimed I had torn his family apart. My mom once left me a voicemail, blaming me for letting my brother live in solitude with no one to care for him. I listened to half of it, then deleted the rest because I had learned a simple truth. Silence isn't weakness, it's freedom. I no longer flinched when I opened my wallet. I no longer waited for a midnight call. I no longer sat shivering on someone else's porch during Christmas just to feel like I belonged. I had stopped, and in stopping, I had started to live. I began volunteering at the city library every Friday afternoon, talking to strangers, helping kids learn to read. That feeling reminded me that I wasn't born just to carry burdens. I could show up, give, and still stay whole. Once a week, Danielle and I video called. No drama, no tears, just recipe swaps. Stories about Ava being mad over vegetables, or Mason learning to spell longer words. One day, Danielle said something I'll never forget. "Claire, I used to think I was just part of a broken family. But now I realize I can build a new one my own way, and you're part of it." I smiled, my eyes misting, not from sadness, but from something warm. Something I thought I'd lost forever. And Eric, he kept spiraling, unemployed, chasing reckless schemes. I heard he once tried to take out a high-interest loan for some can't-miss opportunity. As for my parents, they avoided all family talk. Whenever I checked in on their health, I didn't resent them. I wouldn't let myself be dragged back into blind obligation. I was learning to accept that not everyone wants to change, and that's no longer my burden to bear. One April afternoon, while watering plants on my porch, I got a notification, a new photo from Danielle. It was a drawing by Ava. A small, red-roofed house, 2 kids playing in the yard, and a woman standing by the window, smiling hair softly curled like clouds. At the bottom, Ava had written, "This is home now, Mommy says. Aunt Claire is our sunshine." I set my phone down and stood quietly in the golden light. My heart no longer felt heavy, no longer shackled by accusations or aching for words I would never hear from people I tried so hard to hold on to. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure. I stepped out of the shadows, and for the first time in years, I felt truly alive. Claire's story is proof that sometimes the bravest thing isn't forgiveness or sacrifice. It's knowing when to stop. After years of being taken advantage of in the name of family, she reclaimed herself by walking away from toxic ties and choosing to help the right person. That path wasn't easy, but it led to a new life, one where she's respected, valued, and no longer just a talking wallet. Sometimes freedom starts with a single powerful word: enough. What do you think about Claire's decision? Would you have done the same in her place? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt, real-life stories about family strength and second chances.